part of our locals. And I guess the interesting thing here is this is a team in transition. This is a team now post John Tavares, who of course left them for free agency and signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And listen, you're going to have to adjust. And I think with some young kids in this room, Anders Lee, who was named the captain prior to the start of their game last night, he was told a couple of days ago that he was going to be the captain of this team and get it. There are some young players on this team who can absolutely step up and feel as if that they can fill in the shoes of John Tavares. Now, by no means are these players John Tavares or that caliber, but they could be close to it and could absolutely have a really, really good year going forward. You want to see maybe Barzal, who will take a step forward. He had a great rookie campaign. Let's see if he can build on that as well. And then you have the mixture of, Clutterbuck and Matt Martin, some of those gritty veteran guys who can absolutely be out there to protect the young guys, but also kind of take them under their wing and kind of push them along as well. They had a really good win last night. They blew a 1-0 lead late in the game against Carolina. They were able to win it in overtime thanks to Josh Bailey's power play goal in overtime. The other thing we're forgetting here is that they have a Stanley Cup champion coach behind their bench in Barry Trotz, who knows the game very well, coaches the game very well. I mean, listen, he is a defending Stanley Cup champion coach, and he absolutely is the right person for this job in helping this Islanders team in transition. Lou Lamoriello is at the helm as being the GM and president of operations. He's going to make all the calls and make all the decisions. He wants to build this team and build it right for the future, and we know the resume of Lou Lamoriello. He is absolutely capable of doing so. And then, of course, the other thing is the goaltending situation. Thomas Greiss looked really good last night. They have Robert Leonard as a backup as he took a flyer on him, Lamoriello, to take him in, who could be a pretty good backup, could be also a legitimate starter. Have they switch up, midway through the season? So this is going to be an interesting year for the Islanders. They, too, are in this transition, the post-John Tavares era. We'll see what they can absolutely do going forward in this season. I do believe they can 100% finish ahead of the New York Rangers. I think that's where they are. But, I mean, we're not really expecting too much from this Islanders team, but another team who's young and on the rise as well. So this division in a couple of years could be a really interesting one between the Rangers and Islanders, where both teams are building this team from the foundation up, if you will, and looking to take steps further in the future. Then we finish up with the New Jersey Devils, who made the playoffs last year, have an MVP in Tyler Hall. They didn't get past the first round. However, they were a team who wasn't expected to be there because this was a team that Ray Shero took over 2 seasons ago. Him too coming in, building a team from where it has to be. It was kind of left decent by Lou Lamoriello. I think Lou Lamoriello's final parting gift, was getting Corey Schneider, a very good caliber goaltender, could be at the top of the league if he stays consistent, if he stays healthy. He's obviously looking for a bounce-back year. The numbers weren't too great, but they were still better than a lot around the league, and that's something that Corey Schneider, we know, is capable of doing if he has the team in front of him. Ray Shero has done a fantastic job in putting this team together, getting a couple of guys out of the woodworks as well. Taylor Hall, of course, being one of the better acquisitions for Adam Larson, which was a complete steal on highway robbery from Edmonton a couple of seasons ago in his first big move as the general manager of this Devils team. There's a lot to look forward to, a lot of things to if you're a Devils fan, you should have a lot of optimism. I truly believe this team can make a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to be at the top of the division yet because they're still maybe a couple of pieces away from being that team, but they are certainly heading in the right direction. Kylie Palmieri is another guy, a veteran guy in this league who can absolutely put the puck in the back of the net. He is capable of 25, maybe even 30 goals. And then you also want to see, going back to Tyler Hall, if he can build off of that MVP season that he had a year ago, if that was just only the stepping stone, that he hasn't scratched the surface yet. And that would be something truly remarkable if that is the case for the Devils going forward. So a lot of good things around these three local teams to really look at and look forward to if you are a fan of them. As far as out of the three of them, I think the Devils are certainly ahead of the Islanders and the Rangers when it comes to that, considering that they've been there last year and that they are ahead as far as their building process is concerned. Taking a look at the rest of this Metropolitan Division, which is always stacked, which is always competitive. It went down to the wire a little bit last season as well. You know, you had 5 teams from this division make the playoffs last season. So it's always going to be competitive. You have the defending Stanley Cup champion, Washington Capitals, finished with 105 points. They're a team that's going to finish at the top of this division. My only concern is that the Stanley Cup hangover doesn't seem like it really affected too much, as they won in their opening game, and they played, of course, Pittsburgh on back-to-back nights. They played them then last night, in which they were unable to finish the job, but a high-scoring game, 7-6. They fell to the Penguins in overtime. So they're 1-1 on the season, but again, this is a team fresh off a Stanley Cup. Alexander Ovechkin, who, you know, finally got that ring. It's just going to be interesting to see if this hangover is something that prolongs itself, if you will, because we've seen it. And it seems like in hockey and in baseball that you get these hangovers that kind of last a little bit longer than you would anticipate going forward. So they're going to be at the top. Of course, the Pittsburgh Penguins. You know, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be an interesting team. You know, they still have the talent there, but it just seems as if they didn't have enough last year, and they really didn't make too many changes. And there were a lot of speculations and rumors that possibly they would move Phil Kessel because they were in a cap situation. But this is a team that I think is still an under-the-radar team that could absolutely win this division. They finished with 100 points last year. They still have one of the best in the world, Sidney Crosby. But everybody's a little bit older now, and it's just going to be interesting to see where this team goes this year. I think if I had to look at this Metropolitan Division, the Penguins are going to be that team that kind of like makes you wonder, because they can easily have a fantastic year and take the division by storm, or they can finish below expectations, which really is not too far-fetched to think about. So keep an eye on the Penguins this year. The Flyers finished with 98 points. They had a really good, strong season last year. Claude Giroux is back to the Claude Giroux of old last year. Now let's see if they can continue to build on that, because it seems as if they have the forward talent there. They have a little bit less on defense, and then, of course, you always wonder what and who is the goalie that's going to take this team to the promised land. It just seems as if that they've had goalie issues since Ron Hextall, you know, after him. It's just going to be interesting to see the type of season that they have. It's like they're one or two pieces away, but again, it's that goaltender that is the one that I think needs to bring them over the hump and going forward. But they finished with 98 points last year. Then you got the Columbus Blue Jackets, which I think is a make-or-break year for them. John Tortorella, who, you know, my colleague Brad Kurtzberg brought up in our hockey show the other day, that usually with a guy like Tortorella, after a few years, it starts getting a little stale. We will see how big of a year it is, because it absolutely is a big year. You have a guy like a young kid in Artem Panarin who is not committed to signing long-term. He might test the market. You have Bobrovsky, who's coming into a contract year. So this is certainly a make-or-break year for the Blue Jackets. If there's a team that's going to try to go all in and try to win it, it's going to be the Blue Jackets this year, because it is a very big year for them. Then you got the Hurricanes also in this division. New ownership, who is very eager and has been very aggressive since he started, making some changes. This is a team who is young. They're still working their way up. So I don't really anticipate much with them. That's why I think the Hurricanes, Islanders, and Rangers are the three teams that finish near the bottom of this Metropolitan Division. The division that's going to be very interesting this year, and certainly open up eyes with a few teams, is the Atlantic Division in the Eastern Conference. You got the Tampa Bay Lightning, who finished with 113 points last season. They went out and acquired high-quality players, of course, from the Rangers. They got JT Miller. They got Ryan McDonough. They still have Steven Stamkos. They have Yevgeny Kuznetsov, who had Kucherov, who had a phenomenal season last year. This team has the talent, it has the poise, it has the goaltending. They just got to get over the hump that they have not been able to do so. One of the more shocking things that happened in this offseason, really closer to the start of the season, was general manager Steve Yzerman, who built this team, stepped down from his GM role because he felt that the travel and commute between Tampa Bay and Detroit was really trying on him and his family back in Detroit. So basically he handed over the keys to the Ferrari, and let's see if now they can go and take the next step. But they got to get over that hump. So again, it's going to be interesting. The Boston Bruins really took it by storm as well. They finished a point behind them, 112 points, 50 wins last season. A really good bounce-back year for the Bruins. And they still have that capability of doing it. So they're always going to be a contender against Tampa Bay. Then you have the Toronto Maple Leafs, tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning as far as favorites to win the Stanley Cup this year because of the acquisition of Tavares. They have the pieces in place to do so. They have the goaltending, they have the defense, and they have a young forward core who can put the puck in the back of the net. Austin Matthews, along with Tavares and Mitch Marner, this team is ready to win. The missing piece is in there in Tavares. The only thing that's holding them back right now is William Nylander, who had a really good campaign last year, but he is currently holding out as a restricted free agent. Plain and simple, kiddo, sign the contract, because this might be the only chance you're going to have at glory. Because if you're not on this team this year and you get moved next year, you might not have the glory, because the Toronto Maple Leafs are the team that could win this Stanley Cup this year. Now, there's a lot of pressure because you're playing in Toronto. They're the Toronto team. In hockey's game, this is huge for Toronto. Then you got the Florida Panthers, who have quietly probably one nasty offensive team. They finished with 96 points last season. They just missed out on a wild card spot thanks to the Blue Jackets and the Devils squeaking in with 97 points. This is a team who certainly wants to build off of last year. They have built this team up beautifully, and they're going to continue to do so. So that's why I really think that this Atlantic Division, we're going to see these four teams duke it out this season between the Lightning, Bruins, Maple Leafs, and Panthers. Then you have the Red Wings, who are currently in their rebuild for the first time since I think I was born, that they did not make the playoffs last year at 73 points. I mean, talk about an incredible run for them. So they're also, again, in that transition. The Montreal Canadiens, which was a huge disappointment all in all, and they just seem to be a team that's just discombobulated right now with the general manager. Things really need to turn around somewhere. Then, of course, you got the Ottawa Senators, who they, too, just have been nothing but a disappointment. This was a team 2 years ago that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've cleaned house in a big way. Not a lot of people are fans of it. So the Canadiens and Senators, really the more disappointing teams in Canada. And then you got the Buffalo Sabres, who continue to, they stockpiled draft picks. They've drafted these kids. Now it's time for them to take into effect, and it just seems like it hasn't been able to do so. So, really not expecting much from them. Over to the Western Conference, we start in the Central Division. Again, the Predators, we mentioned it at the top of this podcast that they were the defending President's Trophy champions, but they could not get the job done. They couldn't get over the hump, thanks to the Vegas Golden Knights. Finished with 117 points, 18 losses in regulation. That was it out of 82 games. They are, of course, a good team, well-coached team. They still have the talent there, but they're certainly going to be challenged by the team that finished behind them at 114 points, the Winnipeg Jets, who also are at the top as being Stanley Cup favorites as well. This Jets team is young. They are poised. I really think we're going to see a 50-plus goal season from Patrick Laine on this team. Hellebuck was fantastic in net for the Jets last year. He is only going to get better. They are in the perfect position Now it's just a matter of taking the next step. They got their experience. Now they should be locked and loaded and ready to go. The Minnesota Wild, they finished with 101 points. They're going to be at the top.